In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to create delegates in C#. Now, if you're familiar with C++ or C in the past, you'll note that delegates are a lot like function pointers. There's one major difference. Delegates are object-oriented, and they're strongly typed. And when I was looking for a good definition of what delegates were as I was preparing for this video, I noted one good definition was that a delegate is a special class that represents a method signature. So in that regard, strongly typed. In other words, that the method signature that you define has to be used exactly in all the methods that will implement the delegate. So in the past, in C or C++, you're able to create a delegate of a different method signature, and you're not able to do that. It forces you to use the correct method signature for the instance of the delegate that you'll create. And delegates are used to enable some of the more advanced features of C#. Most notably, whenever you need to do a callback or create an event in C#, these are implemented using delegates. And basically, delegates can be used whenever you have a scenario where you have a method or procedure that needs to be notified when it's its turn to enact on the data in a certain way. So basically, delegates work like this. You create an instance of a delegate, and then you pass in the method name to the constructor. And so in this regard, it's a lot more elegant than VisualBasic.net when you have to do these in several different steps. It allows you to do this all in one step. It's very, very clean in that regard. Then when the instance is invoked, it's actually that method whose name that you passed into the constructor that is run at that point in time using any of the parameters that are passed into the delegate instance. And one other thing to note is that the delegate instance can be reassigned to refer to different methods. And we're going to demonstrate all these concepts right now in a very simple example. So the first thing that we'll do in this example is actually declare the delegate. So we have public delegate void will return nothing from this in this method signature. We're going to call our delegate print message, and it's going to take a single input parameter called name. It'll be of type string. The next thing that we'll do is actually create our two functions that will adhere to that delegate method signature. So first of all, we have print hello, and then secondly, print goodbye. And notice that they both are void, and that they both take a single string value as an input parameter. Now, what goes on inside each of these methods is up to your application. In this case, they do something very simple and just write out hello and goodbye and concatenate in whatever the value was that was passed in. Now we'll have our actual application where we'll use this very simple example of our delegate. Let me get rid of this breakpoint. We'll come back to that in just a moment. So we create an instance of our print message delegate, and we'll call it PM, and we will initialize it with the function that we want to perform first. So in this case, we'll initialize it with print hello, and then we'll call our delegate and pass in the word world. Now let me ask you, what do you think will happen whenever this line of code is performed? If you guess that the print hello function will be called passing in the value world, you'd be correct. Why does that occur? Because print hello has been assigned to the value of PM, and therefore whenever we execute PM, we're essentially executing print hello. Notice the next lines of code. We reassign the value of PM to print message, and we pass in the value print goodbye. And we call PM world another time. What do you suppose will happen this time? Well, if you guess that the print goodbye method would be called passing in the value world, you'd be correct. Why? Because again, the print goodbye function is set to the instance of PM, and therefore when PM is executed, passing in the value world, it'll print goodbye world. So let's go ahead and see this in action. We'll run it twice. The first time we'll just run it all the way through, and then the second time we'll actually step through the code and watch how it's executed. So let me go ahead and build our application, and then we'll bring up our command window. We'll navigate to the bin directory I put it in the projects folder in the CS delegates subdirectory, and now we'll navigate to the bin folder. Now we'll type in CS delegates. Alright, it's in the bin/debug directory. So now we're going to run our application this time, and hopefully we'll get better results. CS delegates. So here we go. We got hello world and goodbye world. Very good. So let's do this. Let's go ahead, minimize, and we'll put a breakpoint here in our application, and we'll go ahead and run it, and we'll walk through our code. So I'm going to use the F11 key to step through. Notice that it stopped at the very first line of code within the main of our console application. And so here we did the assigning to print hello and of our delegate. And now we're going to call our first delegate. And when we do that, notice that it jumps up to the print hello function. And then it writes out to the console hello plus the value world. Let's take a look. So we see hello world shows up in our debug screen. And now we're going to reassign the value of PM to print goodbye. And when we do that and execute the PM, notice that it's actually executing print goodbye, and therefore we can go to our console and look goodbye world. And then let it finish. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, that was pretty simple. I don't understand why I need delegates. I don't understand what they really buy you, but I want you to understand that we looked at a very simple example, and the first thing that was simple about it is that we only had one parameter of type string, but delegates can have any number of parameters or allowable types. The other thing about our example was that it demonstrated the use of static methods, but delegates can perform static or instance methods. We also had our delegate as part of another class, but delegates can be defined wherever a class can be defined. And then finally we return void, but delegates can return anything, any allowable type. Delegates get very interesting when you use them in a multicast scenario. And this is really the magic of delegates. The ability to link together multiple delegate instances and in a chain format, so that if you have 2 or 3 different methods, you can assign them all to the same delegate instance, pass in your data, and that each one of those functions in that chain will operate against that same set of data. And you do this in one of 2 ways. You can either use the combine method or the plus equal operator in order to add additional functions to your delegate instance. Or you can remove them using the remove method or the minus equal operator. And we're not going to demonstrate the remove, but we will show you how to do the add using the plus equal operator. Using the plus equal operator is neat because, again, this is something that you can't do in Visual Basic.net's implementation of delegates. It's a very elegant way to do it. Now there is one important nuance that you have to remember whenever you're using multicast delegates. If your delegate defines a return type and each one of your functions that implement that delegate also, and they have to, return values, only the last executed method will actually return a value. The other returned values will be ignored. So what I've done to illustrate this point is to create or just add a little bit to our existing example and just add 3 lines of code. So what we'll do is, first of all, assign PM equal to new print message, and we pass in a pointer to hello, print hello, And then we'll use the plus equal operator to add print goodbye to the chain. Now what do you suppose will happen when we call PM champ? If you guess that, the first thing will happen is that it will print hello champ and then print goodbye champ. You'd be absolutely correct. So let's go ahead and run the application, rebuild it, and see what the results are. So since we just added code to our existing example, you'll notice that we get our hello world, goodbye world. But also notice that in one method call, we did hello champ and goodbye champ. So this is a very useful scenario, a very useful technology, because you can pass in one set of data and then allow other methods within your application to say, notify me whenever it's my turn to act on that data. So for example, you might have a data set that has orders or some inventory information, and that let's say order information, it can be run past a method that will calculate the taxes and the shipping and will deduct from the inventory. Then it will also print out an email. It will maybe, if the reorder quantities are too low, it will send an order via web services to request more from our supplier, and so on and so on. And so just one basically set of data in one call can be enacted to pass the data to every method that would have an interest in a given set of data, so that it can perform its own business logic on that set of data. Now in that scenario I just described, probably what you would want to do is employ the use of async delegates. And that's where you would basically spin off threads that would handle the multicast delegates, so that there's no blocking issues on the long-running callback. So say for example, if you needed to write to a database, you'd spin off a thread that could handle that, and it would take care of it. At the same time, the next function in the call chain would be able to start, and maybe that's a web service to ask the supplier for more quantity for that given product or item that you've run out of, and then you can spin off another thread to email the customer, maybe log to a file, whatever you need to do. But it allows you to asynchronously perform all of these delegates that requested to be notified with your set of data. We're going to talk about asynchronous delegates in a future video. It's a little more advanced concept, but what we wanted to do in this video is introduce you to the absolute basics about delegates, help you understand how they relate in your applications to what you're doing and how they can be used, and give you kind of a roadmap for things that we'll talk about in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.